All right, Tactical Tuesday, the quiet before the storm, the week after the summer cohort is left and before the semester begins. What does anyone have to talk about?
Well, the biggest thing was just what we wanted to, or what sort of, like, what's the next few of projects for students to do stuff with?
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to talk about. So we have in the lab course, we will have 2 students. I am trying to remember what their path has been, which is to say, which prerequisite classes did they have, and what can we expect about their background. All right, I think they both look like students who are co-enrolled in the Coding the Law course, which is one of the options, which is say they won't be coming in with pre-existing background in our program. They may come with whatever skills they have, but we can't assume that they have finished any of our courses. So that's where they're at. So that means we should assume starting from zero familiarity with any of our work processes. That's the lab. For the fellows, we've got 4 folks, at least one of which is a repeat. Aubrey is one of the fellows. And their work projects are probably a little more clearly defined because there are existing fellow projects that need to be finished. Aubrey's in juvenile, she'll be doing the HIPAA facts. There is a student in the health law, which is Keisha's work on the guardianship, which needs to be taken up and completed, which was itself continuation from a previous year. And then I'm trying to remember what the other 2 are. I think we might have immigration and accelerator practice. I have to check. The point is that we're more about giving. So for both the fellows and the lab, it's always nice if we can give them something easy to start with that gets them familiar with stuff to sort of learn what they want to work into. Especially for the fellows, they have a longer runway. They've got the whole year. I'm happy with the first, third of their time really being just sort of learning the ropes and getting a sense for things, so that while they're learning the ropes in their clinics, they're identifying pain points, thinking about things that might be useful for them to do. And then we can come up with real long-term projects for them to work on, starting in Thanksgiving. But like I said, some of those long-term projects are probably already, it's probably already clear what they'll be. An interesting question comes about with the lab students, since it's just 2 of them, to team them up on something, and they could even prep something up to get it ready for the fall, for the spring's students. So we don't have to, if we do it internally and have them do something from the assembly line, which is presumably why we're having this conversation now, we don't have to meet anyone's expectations as far as an outside client aside from ours. So if we say, oh, we want you to take something, move it forward, get it to a point to hand off to folks, that's great. Or we could have them try to do an individual thing that was sort of self-contained. I had expressed in one of the threads thinking about doing the 258E. And so I don't know, what do people think about that?
I think the 258E is a great project to move forward. It's also really big, which could be good and bad. The good thing about big is that there are lots of carvable pieces that we could have them, feel success in finishing, like things like working on instructions, thinking about help and context that would be needed, etc. So, and the downside is, like, I feel like in the last semester, there were some students who didn't really get to concrete win, which was frustrating for them. I think they expressed it clearly. So I think I do worry about too big of a project for people to feel like they succeeded at the end of the year.
I do like the idea of, I mean, one way to deal with that is, as you were saying, carve out particular things and set the expectations from the beginning. So instead of setting the expectation of, oh, we're gonna finish a form, and then you don't finish the form and you feel like you haven't done it, we set the expectation of you're starting a relay race. You're gonna do X, Y, and Z, carved out parts, and those are wins, and accept those as the wins. I mean, the alternative is if we thought there were wins that were appropriately scoped, we could make those the things too, or add them in together. I guess the question is, given the landscape of things we have in the hopper.
Yeah, I don't know other things that are on like our list of forms. So I know like I'm going to need to find a bunch of small forms probably for my class. I think I'm probably going to have about 16 students. I'm going to really heavily encourage them to do something on the assembly line. I've gotten back and forth on how much I encourage that. But I think I've decided to drop my community lawyer module and my document module, and I'm just doing DocAssembly. So I think then we can go a little bit deeper. I'm just trying to reframe the way that it works. So it's not expecting them necessarily to become expert coders in DocAssembly, but just we can go a little bit deeper and we can spend more time in class helping them advance their projects. So whatever work we do there to generate smaller project ideas is going to be worthwhile, because it'll benefit my class too.
Well,
I'm not sure it might benefit your coding the law class too, right?
Yeah, those are always good options for them too. Yeah, for my students as well.
So that's something that I'm thinking about.
Well, in that respect, then, it does just seem like a 250-80 is like a thing that has been waiting there for someone to pick it up. And if we want it to move forward, we've got to figure out a way to move it forward.
Yes.
I also think there's a big potential win in being able to say we have the 209A and the 258E on the site are available as, packages from us. Because that sort of fills out a universe of things that are closely related that people are used to like saying. It's like, oh, it's like, oh, you want a restraining order. Oh, well, what you need is this or that, right? Like,
yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think we just need to spend a lot of time thinking about like, what's the deliverable? Yeah. I think the way to solve some of the problems that we had last year are really just to scope the deliverables more clearly.
I think so.
So that students know exactly what they need to build and how, and then they have a smaller piece and like build this whole thing, I think would be is overwhelming. But if we have like let's spend a week doing just research part or writing these instructions or, making a flow chart, like that's more.
Yeah. I want to be more intentional about some of the stuff that I took for granted regarding students' understanding of why they were doing what they were doing. I think that they could all benefit from a better understanding of like, what does this form do? Who does it serve? Like I fear some of the students sort of got, and this is also something we've seen in the summer cohort and other cohorts. It's like they got sort of stuck in the like, I'm making this form, I'm filling out this form, as opposed to I am making a tool to help a person who's in this situation.
Yeah, so that's all what I've been thinking about and why I wrote that. I wrote something about that just today.
I saw that, yeah. I bookmarked it.
All right. Well, there's plenty of room for it to grow and improve, but yeah, my thought was to start with that draft.
Yeah.
And
the thing is,
emphasize it more early in my classes.
Yeah. I work with some of that, and well, I have a lot of that in coding the law, but I think the problem we keep running into, this is why, and this is for different reasons, is that we end up finding students in our cohorts or our working groups who have not actually had either your class or my class as an actual prior experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I
it's
mean,
easy for people to leave a class and have some of the understanding. So like there's, even if they had gone through it, they might maybe not have grasped all of it the first time they were encountering concepts or so. Yeah.
It's worth injecting some of that structure back in. So if we did the 258E, then maybe the way to introduce things would be, we show them the 209A as the exemplar. We explain that, this is an analogous workflow, different in these ways. As you can see, some of these forms are overlapped. So let's find the difference. So then we can make it a research project to establish the difference between 258A and 209 and 258E and 209A. And we can frame it explicitly as a research project, absent the technical questions to begin with. So from like a legal standpoint, what is it that you're doing differently? And what information does the court need that's different? And then have them map that to forms as they exist, but not thinking about like the technical different. It's not like, oh, well, here we use this, package and this. So start with that as a research project. Really ground them in understanding that individual they're trying to help and what relief they're trying to get. And then once we do that, have them identify those differences and then very explicitly help them break those differences down into chunks of work, which might correspond to, oh, well, this is these things are exactly the same. So we have the exact same two forms of these two things. Let's not worry about that one. Here's something that's different than the 209A. We need to make that thing work. Okay, then how do we make that thing? And so we just very consciously approach that. I think that sounds right to me and deals with the
Yeah, no, I think that works. And we're talking about for the lab, right? So, or no, for the lab. Okay, so it will be one semester.
One semester, two students.
They'll advance it. We'll advance a chunk of it. So let me see how easy it is to tell what those steps are, because I don't actually know. Like there wasn't a guide somewhere that says, here's how to do a 209A and here are all the forms you can file that I know of. We got that information from Kate. And Caroline, I think, also was really familiar with it too. But one difference with the 258E is I think that they're less often completed by advocates. So I imagine that there is somewhere where it says, here's the relief you can get with the 258E. I think it's way smaller relief, so that's helpful. You're not getting a
no parenting plan
arrangement as part of it.
It does cut out a lot of the complexity there. You're not worried about children or all the stuff that goes with that, which is a large part of the complexity on the 209A.
Yeah. Let's see if there's like some of the stuff on mass.gov is pretty good, or there might be something on Mass Help. But I'd want to know like somewhere where it actually like help you decide, well, what forms can I use? And I don't know, that would be like hard for someone to start if they didn't have that information.
Although it is a very classic legal research task. So if we very clearly define, here is a,
that's true. I just want to make sure that we help them figure out where to start.
Yeah, no, we can give stuff to point them in the right direction.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's probably doable. And I think we can get information from some of the folks that have given us help on the 298 before. So
Yeah.
it's not like it's going to be impossible to get guidance. We don't have to start all the research ourselves.
And I think the way to give them a quick win on that is to have it be a memo project, right? So they write it as a memo. What are the differences between 209A and 258E? And then that gives them a discrete deliverable. And then we go from there. And then we try to advance it as far as we can within the semester. Making sure that anytime they do something like figure out the difference, they write it as a memo that then could be handed off to the next set of students. We tried doing that, or I tried doing that with running sheets, which just don't seem to work for the purpose as ideally they should. But we can go from there. Okay, well, I can see by Joelle's appearance, Joel, that we're running into stand-up time. So we can continue some of this conversation as far as classes are concerned on Wednesday after our appeals call. Is there any additional like big strategy stuff that anyone wanted to address real quick?
Oh, possibly.
And I'm still waiting for Amanda to get me the thing to tie into your thing.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll bug her about that.
Yeah, no worries. Everything's up on my side, so whenever I get it, I can send it. Everything's up and running. Emails are sending and stuff. Sorry, the big thing I was going to bring up was yesterday on the backend call, we had a slight discussion about the need for a designer on forums. I don't know, it feels relevant to bring up here, but I don't know like what exactly we should be doing about it other than just like if we have eyes out for people who want to, who like are interested in doing design stuff, or like, or designers just we know in general, if there, or even if there's anything. I know Quinn had mentioned or has mentioned that Theory in Principle is helping with some GLBS stuff or GBLS stuff. I don't know if we need to do anything else besides that, for sort of like understanding what they're doing for GBLS, and sort of adapting it to our purposes. That was it. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to bring up. Yeah, actually, that process is supposed to have kind of started already, and it hasn't yet. So I'm going to follow up with them and see what's happening with it, to make sure we get that project continued, started. And I think there's two things to bring up there, like, which are worth discussing here. And it's too bad that Michelle's not here, so we can't continue it because she had raised it in that way. But like, we are all amateur coders in some way, or not. Not all of us are amateurs exactly, but to an extent, we're relying on that that labor. And I do worry a little bit about over privileging the perspective of the outside designer. And to refrain from making things better when there are ways that we can, as amateurs, make things better. So I think that's something for us to keep in mind. And then I think the other thing about design for us to think about is like, how many different parts of the process it touches. So if we like say, hey, if it might be hard to carve off discrete tasks for designers, and because they might really say like, hey, I need to understand the whole project. So we should think about like how to either develop or get those skills as part of the team, I think would be ideal. And that may not be realistic or possible, since we don't, like, some of the way we're getting people on our team is through similar interests and preferences, like people who are joining as volunteers and or people who are hiring, and we don't have any money in any of our grants to hire someone as a designer who's going to be along with part of the team. But yeah, I just want to, like, we should think about how to solve those problems and also decide like, well, what are things we can do to advance visual design without that? And it could be like we end up saying like, hey, our discrete design project is we're going to come to you one time and have you build us like a style book. I don't know who could do that for us for no money, but anyway, it's worth thinking about it a little bit. And I don't know if other people on the call have any ideas. And Regis and Joelle, you can weigh in too. It doesn't have to be, we started the conversation.
The university does have a graphic design, but it doesn't quite seem, I'm trying to think, we should remember we're part of a larger university with other resources. They don't have like a UX design program as far as I know, but they do have a like graphic design program. I don't know what overlap, what I don't know to what extent there's any discussion of UX design in that program.
Well, I don't know if UX is quite what we need anyway, right? Because we have some really fixed UX.
Yeah, UX is always a good thing to keep in mind, but it's not necessarily. I do think we need more specifically like UI design. Because I mean, even like at least myself and Michelle have some experience. We went through the. I am blanking on who runs it. The map.
The Michigan.
Yeah, the Michigan Access Project, like the UX course from the spring, and so we have like at least rough ideas of if we want to go about some user testing and how to go about doing it. But that course was like relatively light on the specific like UI, that's UI design, which is I feel which is the thing that is a bit harder to pin down sometimes, and you can't quite like unless you have like really rigorous ways of like testing different like exact different aspects of an interview or something.
That reminded me though, like, so I think that's actually a great idea to reach out to someone in the design program at Suffolk and say like, hey, can someone join? And actually I think we could even from UI, we could simplify it to visual design and say like, hey, can you help us come up with a color scheme that's more pleasing? Think about can you design a logo for us? Can you design, just a layout for this page, and we'll see what we can do, but here's our constraints. But yeah, go ahead.
My best friend graduated recently from Suffolk with a graphic design, so I'll definitely bring this up to her and see if this is just something she'd be willing to help us out with.
And it doesn't have to be something she would help us out with, but if she thinks that someone in the program would be well positioned, right? Like, I mean, she's, I'm sure, busy with her, but if she was interested, would great. But if we she would have a sense of the program and whether or not this is the sort of thing where someone there would be given the skills.
Absolutely, I'll bring it up to her.
It also reminded me that I think we were kind of moving beyond a lot of the first wave of volunteers that we had for subject experts. And I really think it'd be great to do some more outreach to the clinical program to embed expertise volunteers for this project in the clinical programs. So like if we have, we've gotten that on some specific projects like Lit Fellow projects, but not for like nobody on the accelerator has been helpful for any of the housing forums, which is, we've turned to Western Mass for that, which is kind of silly, except that they're interested in tech and wanted to be, and we're volunteers in the project early on. But it feels like we should try to move some of that to the clinical program. Because that will also help them understand what we're doing better.
Yeah. I remember there was some interesting politics around when we tried to do that last time, but it might have been with the subject area. We have to find a way. It shouldn't
be a blocker, but I think on the other hand, we are probably dwindling resources on our subject experts that were faster to access before. Now we might not have a better choice than using internal resources.
No, we should re all that. I think the way to think about that, and maybe we should think about this as related to our to the fellows, because the question is, how do we make that ask in a way that is not interpreted as an ask to do free labor? So to the extent that it could be something that's also giving back to in a demonstrable way to the clinic. So if we made it as, say, part, for example, the way we've had success is in making it as part of the Lit Fellows. So to the extent that a Lit Fellow is working on a project that's part of Assembly Line, then, for example, in health law, the subject matter expert has been right there, and that's worked really, really well. So maybe that's a way of saying, can we, or maybe that's something that makes us think about saying, can we think of really good lit fellow projects that would allow us to leverage that internal expertise in a way that the internal experts felt that they weren't being asked to do something outside of their existing sort of a charge. But I think we've probably moved far enough into stand up that we should switch over to stand up, and we can continue some of these conversations tomorrow. All right, cool. So I'll stop this and then